Welcome to your friendly neighborhood historian, where we discuss just enough history to inform, intrigue, and entertain. I'm Bill Petro. The history of Easter. Why bunnies and eggs? The most joyous of Christian festivals, and one of the first celebrated by Christians across the Roman Empire, commemorates the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is set on the first Sunday after the full moon following the vernal equinox. What is the meaning of the word Easter? There are several theories about where we got the word Easter. The first one is that when Christianity reached the Teutonic peoples, it incorporated many of their rites, which were heathen, meaning of the heath, into the great Christian feast day, at least according to the Venerable Bede. He was a monk who wrote the first history of Christianity in England. Easter month corresponded to April. Bede suggested that it had been dedicated to Istra or Ostara, the Teutonic goddess of the spring and fertility. However, modern scholars have been unable to find any reference to the goddess Bede mentioned anywhere else in the historical literature. Other possibilities for the word's meaning come from the Norse words Oster, Aster, or Ostara, which meant the season of the growing sun or the season of new birth. We get the word East from the same root. Yet another theory is that the word's origin is Christian rather than heathen. Stay with me on this one. White Week in Latin is Hebdomada alba. It was common for those baptized on Easter to wear white robes on the following Sunday, Dominica in albis. The Latin alba means both white and dawn. Perhaps those speaking Old High German mistook their translation for dawn, Ostaren, instead of the plural for white. Ostaren led to the German Ostern, which led to our German Easter. What about Easter eggs? Eating eggs on Easter Sunday and giving them as gifts to friends and children probably arose because, in the early days of the church, eggs were forbidden food during Lent, which is the 40 days before Easter, and were therefore always eaten on Easter Sunday. However, the custom of coloring eggs goes back to the ancient Egyptians and Persians, who practiced this during their spring festival. Edward I, also known as Edward Longshanks of England, think of the film Braveheart, in 1290 brought with him 450 eggs to be covered either in gold leaf or colored and then distributed to the royal entourage during Easter that year. The practice is mentioned again in the 16th century when the Pope sent Henry VIII of England an egg he'd enclosed in a silver case, known as egg silver, as a seasonal present. Now, this was when Henry was still in good graces with the Roman Church. In 2023, when the price of eggs went up over 55% from the previous year due to the avian influenza outbreak a year earlier, and consumers looking for alternate protein sources, the idea of painting and dyeing potatoes started circulating with social media memes of hashtag Easter potatoes and on Facebook, potato goodness. My advice, hide them, but don't bury them. How about the Easter bunny? The Easter hare or bunny also comes from antiquity. The hare is associated with the moon in the legends of ancient Egypt. It belongs to the night when it comes out to feed. It is born with its eyes open, unlike the rabbit. And, like the moon, it is the open-eyed watcher of the skies. The hare became associated with the idea of lunar and human periodicity. Thus, It became a symbol of fertility and the renewal of life. The hare became linked with Easter or Paschal eggs. In the early days of the folklore, the Easter bunny carried red eggs, symbolizing the blood of Jesus. The Easter bunny likely came to Pennsylvania in America in the 1700s with German immigrants, where their fabled egg-laying Osteros would lay their colored eggs in nests that children made for them. Both chocolate bunnies and eggs became popular across the U.S. in the 19th century, with baskets replacing nests. Easter remains the second best-selling candy holiday in America following Halloween. The Easter lily. A more recent Easter tradition is the Easter lily. It starts as a bulb and takes about 3 years to bloom. It has 6 petals and a unique trumpet. Leonardo da Vinci's painting of the Annunciation shows the angel Gabriel handing the Virgin Mary a lily while informing her that she would conceive and bear a son named Jesus. The Venerable Bede compared the Virgin Mary to a white lily. The flower is native to the islands in the south of Japan. It was introduced to England in 1819 and in the U.S. in 1880, making its way to Burma. But a virus wiped out all of the Bermuda lily strain. However, the American World War I soldier, Lewis Houghton, had transported a suitcase full of the bulbs to Oregon in 1919. Farmers and florists from Oregon popularized them to Northern California. The market had been centered primarily in Japan before that, but this stopped abruptly after the attack of the Japanese on Pearl Harbor in 1941. What about the date of Easter? Although Easter was celebrated very early in the church, its recurring date was not agreed upon empire-wide until AD 325. The Roman Emperor Constantine convened the Ecumenical Council of Nicaea, which included several hundred church leaders from throughout the Roman Empire, including the Bishop of Myra, St. Nicholas. Among other issues decided at the council, the emperor wanted Easter not to be tied to the Jewish Passover in the Jewish lunar calendar of Nisan. Instead, he wanted it to be computed independently on a single Sunday, observed worldwide throughout the Roman Empire, using calculations practiced for some time in both Rome and Alexandria, Egypt, even though they had different methods for calculating the spring equinox. Though it was not immediately adopted everywhere, eventually it was, and it was observed on the first Sunday after the full moon following the vernal equinox. The date was to be fixed each year at Alexandria, then the center of astronomical science. The date is an approximation that may differ from year to year. That means the date of Easter may vary as much as 35 days. Thank you for listening. I'm Bill Petro, your friendly neighborhood historian. You can find more details on this topic and others on my website at billpetro.com.